Okay, so today we're going to be covering a little small demo that I wasn't able to actually get to during the Trino community broadcast. The demo today is going to be consisting of everything that you're going to need to actually contribute to Trino. So for starters, we recommend that you download an IDE. And so for those that may not know, IDE is an integrated development environment. This it can come in a lot of different things. There's like free ones like Eclipse. There's quite a few, but the one that we use commonly in the Trino project is called Intellij. It's by a company called JetBrains. They have both a community and an ultimate version. And so don't feel like you need to actually do anything with the ultimates to actually be successful in the Trino project. You can be just as successful using the community project and having all the basically tools that you need to run this. So we have the link here in the show notes in Intellij Community Edition. You just come here and make sure instead of downloading Ultimate and doing like the free 30-day trial, so after 30 days they're going to basically not let you use the Ultimate version. Just download Community and it'll have everything you need to get started. So we have that. That would be the first step. I already have that downloaded, so you'll just basically go through the wizard process as they suggest to go next and install IntelliJ. Then we'll go to Git being the next tool that you need to install. So Git is basically a source control. It basically allows you to manage different files at different versions and do it in what they call like a distributed manner using distributed version control. And this just means that you don't have to have multiple copies of things all over the place just to make sure that everybody's synced and aligned on what they're working on. So this you can look about what it is a little bit more, just kind of Googling Git. You'll kind of get to know it actually by using it, I think is the easiest way. So first step will be to actually install Git. So go ahead and click on this link here where you go to this basically getting started installing Git. This is, by the way, the Git project main page, git-scm.com. And they have all sorts of tutorials on getting started with Git, on not just installing it, but also kind of how to use it. Why some basics on the command line interface and stuff, and just different ways to get you started. So depending on your operating system, Linux, Mac OS, or Windows, check out the installation instructions based on what you are planning on. Or what you're planning on installing it on, and then there are also some flavors of Linux and Unix in general that have Git installed from the beginning. So basically, if you just do git -- version, you should be able to see if that comes back with something, and as long as that command works and it doesn't break in any kind of way, then it would say like command not found. Then you wouldn't have to actually install Git. It will be automatically on your system. So do check that before you go through these installation instructions. And then Docker would be the final one. Docker is a toolkit that we run Trino through or Trino on top of to basically run a instance of Trino. It also runs an instance of different databases. If we're testing different connectors, you'll want to run integration tests to make sure that those basically that Trino is able to actually connect to and run the queries appropriately, especially across different versions. So having Docker is very handy. You can basically go into this install Docker engine, and it will take you to these different options. So for Mac and for Windows, you do Docker Desktop, and that kind of bundles it all up for you. And internally, Docker actually runs on Linux only, so it spins up a local little virtual machine inside of Docker desktop to actually run that for you. But if you're on a Linux distribution, then you don't have to have that kind of thing. You actually will install it natively. And so this actually, although it's natively, that actually means that it's a little more work for you to get it installed, but they have all of the information about how to get that set up. It's really not too incredibly difficult. So they have installations per distro, and you can go to, if you're on Ubuntu, which I think a lot of people are, then you can follow these steps for Ubuntu specific setups, and it will tell you all the steps that you have to run to actually get Docker installed. So once that Docker engine's installed there, you should be able to do Docker version, and should be able to get something back here. If you're on a Mac or a Windows machine, you should be able to kind of click on this kind of Docker icon down here, and make sure that it shows that it's running and things like that. And you can bring up the dashboard, and it will it came up on the other window. And you'll have like some of the existing images that are not currently running, containers that aren't currently running. And we can actually even see this when we run tests later on. That's where the different images, as we run different tests, will show up. So that will be the next step. You got to go through those and steps and install Docker. I already do have it installed on here. So moving on to the next one. So we want to, if you don't have a GitHub account, so we already said that we installed Git. Git is locally something that manages your local files, but then you can also put those files, essentially a copy of them on a remote location. So being like in a repository that is hosted somewhere online. And so GitHub is a great location for that. It's free. You basically just if you go to github.com. It will take you to a sign up thing if you haven't signed up before. And so this one is mine. I basically have, if you get like a profile, and you can have all of the, a lot of cool things set up on your profile so people kind of get to know about you. But then specifically, they'll probably be more interested in, okay, what's repositories are they doing with anything with? And so these are my repositories under my name. So under Bits on Data Dev. I have all these different repositories, and I have what's called a fork of the Trino repository, in this one in particular. So if we look at the original one, this is under TrinoDB Trino. And if we go to the Trino fork that I have, it's Bits on Data Dev /Trino. And so this is roughly my little copy that I get to play with, my little sandbox that I'm working with here. And I can do anything that I want. I can push my code up here, and I have full reign over this repository. However, to get something from that repository, my fork of the Trino repository into the actual TrinoDB /Trino repository, I have to go through what's called a pull request. And so this is where, if we look at just one random one, add requirements for ClickHouse connector, this would be, I changed some files. So this is coming from Joe Loden, and he has these requirements. He added this code in here, and then he made a pull request. And so, what this is going to basically encompass is all the changes he made, some conversations that he had with the maintainers, and it's up to the maintainers now to actually decide if they want to merge this in or not. And they may make some suggestions on the files themselves. Hey, you need to update this or do this. So you can see there were some things saying, yeah, we need to test this and do this. I mean, kind of pointed out some specific thing. See this other test, so make sure you point that out. And so, now Joe is going to update that and then push that in. And then at some point, one of the maintainers, Ashar is actually one of our maintainers. He might go ahead and say, okay, this is approved, and wait for one more person to check. And once we have two people that have checked, a maintainer is then allowed to actually merge that pull request. And so that's where it'll go from this copy of essentially this fork into the original Trino master. And this is all happening on GitHub. So this is why you need your own GitHub account, and you'll need your own you'll need to actually make your own fork. So So how do you? So you set up your you configure your GitHub account, and here's some steps on how to do that for GitHub. Also, this is another instructional thing from the Git account or Git website. So go ahead and look through that tutorial if you have any issues kind of setting that up. But it should be pretty straightforward if you go to github.com. Afterwards, then go to the Trino repository and click the fork button. I actually have a fork button listed here, but in case you want to go the repository route, you go here and you'll click the fork button. And if I click the fork button, I already have a fork of it. So it's going to say, hey, you've already done this. Do you want to go to one of these two that you've already created? So then it would, take a second if you haven't done it already. And then it would basically make a copy of Trino /Trino, TrinoDB /Trino into bitsondatadev /Trino, or whatever your actual username it ends up being in GitHub. And so you forked it, you now have it, and now you're going to actually want to make a clone of your fork. Now be careful here. You want to make sure that you're on your forks page and not the page of the original site. So you want to. So if you're on here and I go here, there's this little drop down thing that I can actually get the clone command from. Copy this, but I don't want to get it from here because I actually want to make sure that when I clone, I actually want to clone my fork and make changes to that fork first. And then I'll do the pull request to actually get it into the main one. So make sure that you're on your own name or under your own name account when you're dealing with that fork. So we can copy this over. And again, this is a step that I've already done, but I would say you would just put git space clone. So we could run this here, and if we look at I've already cloned this basically and from this repository. So if I do we're not doing tree here. Yeah, actually, let me just I want to list these out. That's what I'm trying to do. So we have all of this Trino repository already pulled down, but you would basically just put git clone, and then no, I am really fludging up this here. Let's see. Let's copy here. Get out of this. You would copy this. So copy this SSH clone. You say git clone and then paste, and then I would run that. But I am already in my repository that I've pulled down. But I did just want to point out, when you paste this in, notice that it's bits on datadev and not TrinoDB. That's really the main key. So now that we have that, we've essentially cloned down our we've cloned down Trino. Now we just need to open it up in Intellij. So we've pulled the code down. It needs to get pulled down in Intellij like it is here. So to do that, again, I'm going to reference you to documentation that shows you how to do this. So Trino is a Maven project. It has you usually can tell that something's a Maven project whenever on the root directory it has a pom.xml. And this is basically just telling you all of the dependencies and things to pull in for Maven to basically know about to compile and build the project. Okay, so the next part is, once you have that code pulled down, you want to open that project in Intellij. And so the easiest way is, when Intellij first starts up, you're going to be shown this small little window here. So you want to go click on Open or Import. And I've already imported this, so it's going to basically just pull in the project that I already have, but you would just basically navigate to the area where you cloned the repository. In my case, I have this code directory, and then I pull it out from Trino. And so we basically, I would pull this in after, and again, this is the stuff that was pulled down from the git clone command. So I just simply open that up, and then you'll probably get faced with something that says import with Maven settings, and you just have to kind of follow the wizard there, and basically it's a kind of a next thing. But you'll eventually come across this particular project in this setting here, and if you do get lost, they do follow these IntelliJ documentations on how to open an existing project. The next part is to add an Airlift code style check. Now, the code style check is kind of the unspoken code style rules of like, and when I say unspoken, it's actually very explicitly defined in this code style check file and code definition file. And so this is something that if we go into Airlift, there's a project that kind of sits underneath Trino that is called Airlift, and so this definition is they use it across Airlift as well as Trino. So this is the definition, and this is ultimately something that takes all the options and all the different things that you can save in IntelliJ, and you basically just pull them into IntelliJ. And once you have it pulled in, you are able to basically run a reformat, and any type of formatting that doesn't agree with how this code style settings are set up, you would basically run the reformat, and then it should automatically format it for you, which is great. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. But essentially, you import that into IntelliJ, so we can again have these example code right here. You'll go to Setting Preferences and then Editor Code Style. So let's go ahead and do that. So inside here we go File, and we'll go to Preferences. In particular, it's Preferences. I think it's different if you're on a Windows. Then you'll go to Code Style, and then underneath Code Style, I think we say, what is it? Code Style, and then you want to copy to project, import scheme, and then IntelliJ IDEA code style XML. If you're coming from Eclipse and you have some other way that you want to pull in other code styles, by the way, you can do this. But in particular, we already have ours defined in the IntelliJ code style XML. So you'll go ahead and do that, and then it's going to ask you where to find that. And so you basically want to copy this raw XML into a file, and it's going to find that file right here. So you actually say that, okay, Airlift.xml, open that, and then you're going to say import scheme from Airlift, and then to whatever I'm going to call it. So I'm going to just call it demo Airlift. So that way you see that it's, so this is demo Airlift. And I had already imported that, but now I have two of the same basic setups. So I'm just going to go back to demo Airlift and actually delete it. So delete that schema. And so I'm now going to use Airlift and keep that on as it was before. And what this allows me to do, if I'm here in this project, and let's say I've written something, kind of like, let's say I have this space kind of messed up here, like a kind of off spacing here. Anybody can kind of write code the way they want to, but at the same time, there's some things that make the code look nicer. And so having these alignments are really important. So I would want to be able to kind of just come in here, do a quick refactor. So I'll click on the file that I'm going to do this. So this is Elasticsearch client. I'm going to right click. And also, another way you can see which file was changed is you can see this Elasticsearch client is blue compared to all the rest of them are white. This is one of the reasons why it's nice to have an IDE to actually highlight these things for you. So now another cool part is that you can actually right click and click reformat the code. And if you can get to know the keystrokes where it's just Option Command L in the Mac. It's probably something else different in Windows. But if you get to know that, then you can just make that a quick keystroke. But or if you never want to remember that, and you're more into using your mouse, that's fine too. So you just right click reformat code, and you can optimize the imports and do all the other things, but we just want to basically clean up the code. So it's going to actually see how it automatically formatted that. It knows that you don't want to have these things like kind of out of line. So it's going to automatically fix up those pieces for me. And that's really great, and it's going to do it along the guidelines of how we're supposed to do it in Trino, based on just the agreements of what all the maintainers and contributors have agreed on before. So So that is like I think a big part of it. If you can get to this point where you've actually even gotten this set up and code's been pulled into the IntelliJ, like congratulations, it's really already a big deal that you've been able to do that. The next part is to actually build the project, and so this will be kind of kind of final piece to actually get you up and running. So you can just do. There's a simple command, which this is shown. Let's go to the front of here. You see this simple command, maven clean install, and then you have this one option here, dskip tests. What this is doing is this is calling on Maven. We have a special Maven script that is defined in the Trino project to handle these things, to handle building. And then you have, Maven has these typical kind of phases of the build process that it defines. So what these phases that we're running will run a clean, which means clear out all of the stuff that I had done in the last run, on the last build. I've changed the code. I want to basically clear out all the old stuff. So I'm running clean to clear out all of the old kind of build files, and I want to basically do a new one. And so that is actually what install is doing. So you're saying clear out the old, out with the old, and with the new with the install part. So these are the two phases that you'll run. And then you're going to actually put this skip test here. Tests are what are in general. This will stop the whole test suite from running because it's going to take typically on the order of about an hour to run the entire test suite. And that's going to be probably more longer than you're going to want to do every single time you make a small incremental change. Now, you're going to want to run those tests at some point, but what actually happens is when you commit your code back to your fork, it will actually run the test, all that hour-long test for you. So when you're developing locally, you actually can just keep using the skip test, and you may just want to run just the tests that you've changed, or any tests that you've added that might, or maybe one or two tests that is going to actually test the code changes that you're making locally. So this is just a nice way to stop all tests. It's not to say we're never going to run a test against this. So let's expand upon this initial simple build format, and we can actually make it a little faster. So this -pl is actually listing the different projects inside of that you either want to include or you want to exclude. So when you do this bash operator, or this kind of basically this exclamation point before this colon and then the name of the project module, and specifically, so if you look at Trino server RPM, this is coming from let's see. Is it core that has, so Trino server RPM. So this is one of the sub modules in Trino. And this is basically going to create a binary so that you can install this on a CentOS or various other systems. And it's not required that you have this during testing or during local development for the most part. So when you're developing, and this takes a lot of time to actually build, so it's nice if you could just skip the things that don't actually need to build like that. So let's exclude this Trino server RPM, and then you can separate that with a comma, and then you can also say, well, we're not going to be looking at the docs right now. We're just going to be updating the code for now, so let's also exclude docs, this proxy file, verifier, benchmarks. All of those can actually get skipped for the general use case. And then what we want to do is let the rest actually build. So we're going to also do the original command of clean install. This runs the, I think there's some multi-threading components that happen here. This, I think, specifies 2 threads to run on. I'm not totally familiar with what NSU does, but there is some optimization done there so that the overall Maven commands run faster. Again, we have the original thing that we had before, which was skipping the tests. We're going to skip making Java docs. This is, again, superfluous because we're not going to be using, looking at the documentation right away, at least on our local. Source, we're going to skip the, building out source for the documentation. And then we're also going to skip the initially these checks that are coming from that Airflow definition, that code style definition that we had before. This leaving this to skip all means that you're not going to actually enforce that the code style is perfect while you're developing. Maybe you just want to skip that for now, and it's going to end up making a much faster build. So we've already I had already done this. Oh yeah, let's just go ahead and we'll run that, and I'll speed it up in the video just so you can see what a compile looks like. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so as you can see, this took 3 minutes and 20 seconds on wall clock time. So it's a decently sized time to take. You'll probably just run it, go make some coffee, and you'll pull out the latest code, run it, go grab a new pot of coffee, come back, and this will be done. And this is the good first shot to take. That'll build the project, every other project. And then what I like to do after this, whenever I'm developing, so if I'm going to be making a change in a particular module, so if we look at the Elasticsearch module, again, this is one, instead of at the core, we're looking at the plugin and in the Trino Elasticsearch. So we want to not build anything else because we're only going to be making changes in this Trino Elasticsearch location. Then why don't we just only build just that as we make the incremental changes, and the rest is all kind of encapsulated in its own little plugin and this kind of thing. So you only actually build what you are working on. So this will go much faster than 3 minutes 20 seconds. So first, let's go ahead and look at a change that we would like to make. So before we get to this, let's just assume that we want to make our change now. We've built the project, we have everything running good. We're pretty much ready to be setting up for the contributors. Now there's a legal thing that we have to go through, so you have to actually sign this CLA. And this is just basically stating that you agree that the work that you're doing is going to be contributed to open source, and that you are basically opening it up under the Apache software license, Apache license in version 2.2. And so yeah, it's basically just kind of giving up that you have any ownership over the code, and that it is, essentially you're donating your time and energy and code to the Trino project. So once you sign that and you submit it to CLA@trino.io, then they will have that on file. And basically after, I think it's every couple days or a few days, there's a list. So this is under the CLA, TrinoDB/CLA repository. There's a list called contributors. And so if you look under here, I can actually find my tag from GitHub, and they basically just keep a list of people who have sent them that tag. And once you're on this list, this is the list essentially that we have a thing called CLA bot, and it will scan to see, hey, is this person who's trying to submit code to us, have they already signed a CLA agreement? And that's basically all that is. So you'll submit that. Ideally, before you start, you can even submit that first and then start working on the code changes and get your way through there. So let's go open some of the contribution process now, and this is going to get us into the nitty gritty, right? So contribution process, we've got everything installed now. We want to actually contribute something. So let's, the first thing is you'll start a discussion, and you'll basically make an issue, or you can even discuss it on Slack. I have an issue that I want to fix. So let's see. I already know this. I've already talked with, the maintainers. So I basically want to, I'll go ahead and explain this issue so that they understand it, I guess. So you could think of it like explaining what your goals are. And so I would go in and say, well, okay, on the Elasticsearch connector, I noticed that when I'm putting in these array fields, the structure is actually still under the old name of Presto. So I want to actually put in a namespace of in the meta field here. I want to actually make this where it will use Trino, and then we can deprecate and still be backwards compatible. If somebody has an existing configuration that uses the Presto namespace, we can basically have them move to Trino at a later date, and then we'll deprecate that field over time. So I want to initially, though, have it to where I can, pull out these definitions here for the isArray stuff for under meta.trino. So first, we're going to have an issue that we're going to create for this. So if we go github.com, go to Trino DB, that's Trino. Let's create an issue. And make sure first we want to look for Elasticsearch, and then let's see if there's anything that says we want to, from a quick glance, it's looking like anything that had Presto in it was no longer in there, right? So I think that we can create our own issue here. It's going to say new issue. You're going to say basically, let's see, remove. For now. Okay, so all this is basically saying is we're going to be adding this Trino namespace to Elasticsearch to meta properties instead of the Elasticsearch connector. And we'll link to the documentation to be specific about what we're doing there. Let's go ahead and submit this new issue. And now I'm going to basically, this could be submitted by anybody, and then, you can then assign somebody else, or you can submit the issue yourself, just document it and then assign yourself to update it. So I'm going to go ahead and assign myself and basically run the change that will be done here. And so now that we have this issue created, we can now go and start working on the code that is actually going to address this issue. Let's go ahead and I am going to basically have the changes pre-done, and so that way I didn't have to do this live on the fly. So we basically had this change, and let's go ahead and look at if we do under the Trino Elasticsearch, if we do a git commit directory. What's nice about commit directory, you don't have to feel like you have to do any kind of committing yet, but this is like a git operation that you could do, and this is just preparing to look at what you're going to do before you actually hit the commit button. So let's go first and look at what changes we made in Elasticsearch client. So before, we were pulling out that property, and we were assuming automatically that it was going to be the Presto namespace, if anything, under there. But now what we have is actually that we want to first, we'll give priority to the Trino name. If both definitions are in there, we'll give priority to Trino and pull that out. And then if that meta properties value JSON node is null, essentially if there is no Trino value, then we'll also give a shot to try to say, okay, well, let's also pull out the Presto value inside of there, and then hand that meta properties down to index metadata as we were before. So that's all the changes really doing. Now, the more interesting part that we're going to add here is we want to, let's see. We want to add a test. So this is all additive. We don't have to look at the old stuff. It basically just didn't exist before, this test. We want to make sure that there's the backwards compatibility with just Presto. So we test out this meta mapping with a field called a, and make sure that we set that it is an array, and we have the same property and the keywords. So we create that index. We put a value a and then some list foo bar. And then we say, okay, select A from this Presto value and make sure that it actually works. And so sure enough, if provided this thing doesn't complain when we run the test, that we are basically asserting that, yep, it was able to actually map the values with Meta and Presto. Then similarly, we want to make sure that the new Trino value that we're adding also works. So similar type of part of this test is that Trino in the is array still works. And when you are pulling this out, essentially when you are pulling this out, it also works as defining this as an array. Otherwise, it should complain. And then finally, we have a mixed mode where we're trying to test that Trino has the what's it called? The priority. And so if you have one where somebody has defined both Trino and Presto, that Trino is the one that gets taken and not Presto. So here we have field A, and then here we have field B. And then when we actually try to pull data out, we're actually pulling from field A, and that actually doesn't exist. In fact, the B field doesn't exist. The A field does exist. And so as long as we use this Trino, this correct Trino property, then that should work. And in this case, as long as the test passes, then this gets returned, and that's verifying that the Trino takes precedence during the mixed mode. So, okay, we've made our changes. Great. Why don't we want to actually run this change? So I'm going to go ahead and the next part that we're going to do is actually going to be specifically building out the Trino-Elasticsearch module. And what we want to do there is we're just going to basically do one quick check before we actually run the test to see if we are going to have any issues with the code style and the code that we wrote. So if we take out this skip all true bit here, and instead of saying what we're not going to run, we're going to take off the kind of exclamation point here, the kind of bang symbol, and we're going to basically just do a colon and then the one module that we're going to include in this. So this is actually still going to be pretty fast because it's only building one single module instead of all the rest, and we're going to specifically be checking for any errors that we made. And so this one should be, it's not going to actually run the test, but it should be basically there to just say, does the code compile, and is there a check? So it's not checking like the logical, does the change that we made correct? It's only going to be testing like, is the code sound? Is it something that can compile, and is the style correct? And so in this case, we got build success. So, and this was 15 seconds compared to like the 3 minutes that we had earlier. So it's a lot faster, and this is kind of how, if maybe there was an error here. So for instance, let's go ahead and look at the area of the code that we changed. Let's say that we actually, had this here, and then we had an enter bar here. So then let's actually run that now. So we're going to see that this is going to give us a failure because we don't have the code formatted in a correct way. So you say you have 2 check style violations. And so they're very clear about where these check style violations have. You look at, okay, this is the file, base Elasticsearch connector test, and that's the one I'm on now. And it says area 525. Okay, so this is saying that I have multiple consecutive blank lines. So, okay, that's this one right here then. I'm guessing that they just didn't like that we had this extra one. So let's remove that. And then this indentation, child has incorrect indentation at level 10. So I'm guessing that means that this is, if you look at here, this is saying level 10. This is how 10 is right here. Or I think that might be like 9 to 10. And then it's basically just saying, get this aligned with the rest of the code. And so if we then run this one more time, we should be able, and actually I could have also shown you that you could technically have run reformat there, and it would have reformatted the code for you in the way that you need to have it to check it in and get it done. But sure enough, when we fix this, we should see that we have the successful build. So great. Now we have a successful build. Let's actually test now that this actually works. Basically, here on this test meta presto namespace backwards compatibility, we want to run this test. So let's go ahead and actually run that now. Now that we've verified the syntax is good, we verified that the code can compile, we now want to just verify that the logic is correct based on this test that we've created. So let's go ahead and run that. And we're going to run it on the Elasticsearch 7 module. So it's going to test with Elasticsearch 7. And this is where Docker kind of comes in. So you see this test containers thing come up, and it's going to basically pull up an Elasticsearch cluster. This thing is basically the parent test container container. And what the test container does is it will pull up other containers as needed. So we're testing the Elasticsearch cluster here, and we are running this integration test against this Elasticsearch cluster. If you look at port 55046, you can actually now locally talk to port 55046, and it actually has this running Elasticsearch cluster there for you. So so that's actually running, and it's validating that, at least it's initializing it right now. And then soon we should see that this one specific test gets run, and it takes just a second once it gets started. And basically all it did was ran through this and verified all of these parts of the test and the different properties that we had set in. So great. It looks like this is like getting pretty far along. Now there's another piece that we probably want to add here, and that's we need to update the documentation. We'll do that in a separate module for the documentation. But for now, I just wanted to kind of show you this part of getting the test going. Let's go ahead and actually commit this code now. Now that we actually have the code that will be replacing this, that will be handling this issue, we want to actually move the we want to actually commit that code and get it pushed to the remote repository. So we can basically take this title here, add the Trino namespace to the meta properties, the Elasticsearch connector, and add that to this commit message. But before we commit, we want to make sure that we're actually on a different branch other than master, because when we merge this, we don't want to be merging from master. So so let's go ahead and make a separate branch. We're going to make a new branch and call this, we can even just call this PR, or let me see, we can call it PR or fix-8383. So let's do fix-8383 and go ahead and check out the branch. And this still keeps our changes here with the Elasticsearch client and the connector test. And now we're on this fix-8383 branch. So we're going to go ahead and check all these in, commit it to fix-8383. And once we've committed that in, it's now at a commit state in our local repository, right? This is just on my computer. So if I go right now to GitHub and I look in my Trino fork, so if I look, let's go to here, my profile, and go to my repositories and go to Trino. So this is the bits on DataDev Trino. If we look, there is no branch currently that has anything to do with this fix-8383. So we're going to actually have to push this commit that we made here locally up to that branch, up to that fork. So let's go ahead and do git repository, and we're going to do push. And so this push, by the way, ignore all this extra stuff. It's mainly going to be pushing this origin fix-8383 out. So let's go ahead and do that push. And now, when we look at this, we can see this popped up here, right? Fix-8383 has been recent pushed in less than a minute ago. So let's compare. If we look at and compare it to the bits on DataDev. So look, this is the basic pull request that you'd want to do. you would say fix 8383. And so here we can actually say, fixes 8383, and that's actually going to link to this to the issue that we had over here. So now we can just say fixes 8383. People can get the information that they need to there, and then we can look at the actual changes that we had before. So this pulls up the change there, and ultimately shows the test that we created. And so let's go ahead and everything looks good. So we'll go ahead and create the pull request. For right now, I want to actually create it as a draft pull request. And this is nice because it will basically kind of signal. We can even put work in progress if we want to up here. These are just little signals. This is in draft. This is work in progress. Don't merge this. And it's basically saying, hey, I've made some changes. I want you to be able to review them before we actually go ahead and do this. So I'm going to click draft pull request. And now I actually have this pull request set up and saved. And so what's basically going to happen is, like I told you before, all of those big checks that, these tests that are going to happen before you actually get anything merged in, all of these checks have to go through. First and foremost, the very first check is that CLA bot that I told you about, and it's verifying that your CLA is signed. If you don't have your CLA in that list before, in the CLA contributors list, it's going to ultimately kind of put a little X around it until you get that CLA signed. And then it's going to run through these checks. This will take approximately, somewhere around an hour or so to complete. And so don't try to wait around and wait for it to complete all the way. But now you've actually set up your commit. At this point, I can request somebody to review it. And so I can just click, request. And now Martin knows that I want to have a review on this. I'm going to take him off actually now because I don't want him to have to do this right away. So I'll take that off right now because I just realized, I have to do something else. So I removed him from it. I'll add him on there later whenever I'm ready for him to check my commits and make sure everything looks good. So that is how you set up a pull request. We'll finish this other part out. That's basically a step one to get the contribution in. And you'll want to go ahead and basically get to a point where once you're ready for a review, you can click from that draft and say ready for review, and go ahead and review my code and remove this work in progress. So you would basically just take this off, save that, and now they're saying, okay, work in progress changed, and now it's ready for review. And then you'll add somebody to the reviewer list, have them take a look at it, and they'll put their comments saying, hey, I'd like this to get changed before we push in, or maybe add more tests, add the documentation, things like that. That's probably what I would expect I need at the very least, is to update the documentation so that here it's correctly saying Trino versus Presto. And so once I get that done, they'll review it, and once it gets to a good enough state, they'll merge those changes in, and then that will get put onto the next release cycle. So hopefully this was a useful set of overviews on how to do the contribution. So you can look through these specific fields. I mean, we kind of went through these just by talking through them. And where we're at now is we created the pull request. The last couple steps are kind of what I expect is suggested, is that you'll have your reviewers look over it. You'll address those changes and kind of keep going into this loop until finally you're at a good state. You have multiple people accepted, and then the maintainer will finally merge the pull request. So once you've done that, you can actually update everything on the issue, saying that it's solved, and then also you can see here now that because I put that fixes 8383 here, this actually points to this particular pull request. So GitHub does a lot of good things for the workflow, makes things very visible and connected. So really, it's a great tool to actually do these reviews and do all of the again, testing that happens here all in one little convenient location. So of course, if you always run into issues, please reach out to us for help. We're definitely eager to help out in this venture. It's not the most straightforward thing the first time you do it, but once you've done a couple of these, then they start to become a little more straightforward once you get used to the basic overall set of tasks that you have to do. So good luck and happy coding.